for the faithful. President Donald Trump again says it is time to reopen churches. We're at the White House. We're also in Italy with reaction after public masses have resumed following a nearly 3-month lockdown. Battling leukemia, an update on the health of Bishop George Murray from the Diocese of Youngstown, Ohio. And a blessed achievement. The founder of the Knights of Columbus moves one step closer to sainthood. On EWTN News Nightly for Wednesday, May 27th, 2020. Good evening and thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Tracy Sable. We are seeing more signs that the United States is getting back to business. Just announced, SeaWorld and Walt Disney World will reopen in Orlando in June and July. And Las Vegas casinos will welcome customers next week. There is even hope that America will avoid a second wave of COVID-19 later this year. Correspondent Owen Jensen reports now from the White House. Owen?
Tracy, earlier this afternoon, President Trump left the White House for Florida to watch the astronauts prepare for liftoff. And there are signs tonight the economy may be ready for a liftoff of its own.
This morning on Twitter, President Donald Trump once again urging the nation to get back to business. We passed 15 million tests today, by far the most in the world. Open safely. The president isn't the only one who wants America back open.
People want this country to open up. You now have 50 governors have reopening plans. You now see the consumer confidence. The stock market yesterday was because of the confidence in the market that states are reopening, that people are going back to their places of worship, their places of work.
Regarding places of worship, the president reiterated his calls for them to reopen.
Now, there may be some areas, by the way, where the pastor or whoever may feel that it's not quite ready, and that's okay. That's okay, but let that be the choice of the congregation and the pastor.
And what about schools?
We live in a big country, and there are certain states, cities, regions, counties in which the level of infection is at a rate that the schools can be much more flexible in how they open, whereas in other areas, it may be that it is really quite risky.
A new AP poll finds some are fearful even if a vaccine is approved.
To get a COVID-19 vaccine within a year or two causes me to fear that it won't be widely tested as to side effects.
And those fears of a second wave of coronavirus cases?
We often talk about the possibility of a second wave or of an outbreak when you're reopening. We don't have to accept that as an inevitability, and particularly when people starting thinking about the fall.
And we're also learning tonight that on Friday, just 2 days from now, Washington, D.C. will lift its stay-at-home restrictions. That means restaurants can have outdoor seating and barbershops and salons can open, but with strict social distancing rules in place. Tracy?
Okay, thank you, Owen. White House correspondent Owen Jensen reporting tonight. Thank you again. With the Senate out on recess, the House is taking center stage on Capitol Hill. Debate continues on FISA Reform. Plus, a new lawsuit has been filed on behalf of House Republicans over remote voting. Correspondent Eric Rosales reports now from Capitol Hill. Eric.
That's right, Tracy. Republicans are suing Democratic leadership in federal court to block proxy voting in the House. Now, Speaker Nancy Pelosi's plan is to allow a member of the House to be able to have votes for up to 10 other lawmakers. Republicans say that that is unconstitutional.
Speaker Pelosi needs to start insisting that all of her members show up to work here at the Capitol.
Republicans say more than 70 Democrats plan to vote by proxy this week, and they criticize Speaker Nancy Pelosi's rule change that permits remote voting for violating the Constitution.
Someone could be sitting in the state of California and be registered as voting present on the House floor because someone else pushed the present button for them.
GOP leader Kevin McCarthy also unsuccessfully asked Democratic leadership to pull the FISA Reform bill off the floor. That bill aims to renew a trio of expired surveillance tools used by the FBI. Democrat Peter DeFazio has been against the Foreign Surveillance Act from the beginning.
Broad, warrantless, intrusive internet searches of everything you look at, browse online. For what purpose? Who knows?
President Trump opposes it, tweeting last night, quote, "I hope all Republican House members vote no on FISA." Ranking member of the House National Security Subcommittee, Congressman Jody Hice, agreed, tweeting that Republicans, quote, "need to investigate FISA from top to bottom and implement serious reforms." I asked him what reforms he wants to see.
In a nutshell, just to protect American citizens. There is a right way and a wrong way to spy on, if you will, or to get information about American citizens. And abusing the FISA courts to accomplish that is the wrong way to go about it.
Congressman Hice tells me that the House really needs to hold a hearing to dive deep into FISA reform to find out what needs to be fixed and then to fix it. This way, the FBI can still spy on terrorists, but still keep American citizens' rights intact. Tracy?
Correspondent Eric Rosales reporting from Capitol Hill. Thank you, Eric. We have some sad news to report tonight. Bishop George Murray, who is battling leukemia, has submitted his resignation as the head of the diocese in Youngstown, Ohio, for health reasons. The diocese says in a statement, quote, "His present state of health leaves him less able to fulfill the tasks entrusted to him as Bishop of the Diocese of Youngstown." Bishop Murray is undergoing a third treatment for leukemia, which returned last month. Thousands of people in Hong Kong are protesting another proposed law today. This one makes it a crime to disrespect the national anthem. Meanwhile, in another part of Hong Kong today, a small fire was started on a busy street. Lawmakers in Hong Kong are debating a bill that criminalizes abuse of the Chinese national anthem. This week, the protesters have also been rallying against a proposed national security law. And today in Washington, D.C., Secretary of State Mike Pompeo certified to the U.S. Congress that Hong Kong is no longer independent from mainland China and will not continue to get favorable trading terms. In Japan today, the cabinet approved the biggest supplementary budget to stimulate the economy. It adds another $300 million to this year's spending. The extra funding helps small businesses strengthen the healthcare system and gives subsidies to local governments. In South Korea, a big spike in COVID-19 cases. This just as kids get ready to go back to school. South Korean officials are reporting 40 new cases today. That is the biggest daily jump in almost 2 months. Health officials say the increase in cases is raising alarms as millions of children return to school. South Korea was able to contain a severe outbreak earlier this year. Officials in Italy say the number of coronavirus cases in the country continues to decline. Following a nearly 3-month lockdown, public masses have resumed with some safety guidelines. Indoor gyms opened this week and people are starting to get used to a normal social life again. But health officials warn the virus is still circulating and they urge the public to continue using face masks and other protective measures. Father Stefano Cascio, parish priest at the Church of St. Bonaventure in Rome, joins us now. Thank you, Father, for joining us.
Hi, Tracy.
So, Father, tell me, how is celebrating Mass with the public again, and do you see a strong attendance?
Well, it's a relief, you know. It was so difficult at the beginning to say Mass without people, and one time was very difficult. On the fourth Sunday of Easter, it's the Good Shepherd, and without nobody, it was like be alone like this was so difficult. So we are very happy in Italy to celebrate Mass with people, and but the people are afraid. So we are waiting for them. We are beginning everything. It was the first Sunday, last Sunday. So we hope that this Sunday will be more and more people coming back.
And Father, what's your spiritual journey been like as a priest during this lockdown? Can you talk about that?
Yes, of course. At the beginning, it was a good thing to grow spiritually because it was Lent, so it was a desert. So I think it could help us. But during the Holy Week and after with Easter, we need to have people. We need to express the joy of Easter. And so this became to be more difficult. We develop, the the pastoral with internet, with Zoom, all these meetings. We did videos to the children because it was difficult to be so alone without them. So we wanted to continue the formation. So we did what we can. But now we need to have the community, and it's good to be together now.
Yeah, absolutely. Father, I know Italy has suffered a lot with over 32,000 people dying from the coronavirus. What would be your message to the faithful right now?
Well, Italy, I don't know for United States, but the people in Italy were very anxious, and they are now anxious and afraid. So I think we have to say them that it's like, you know, I was born in 78. So I'm the John Paul II generation. And John Paul said to not be afraid. And it was Jesus' words, because in the gospel we have a lot of not be afraid, not be afraid. And so I think we have to be respectful for the rules. But we don't have to be anxious. We don't have to be afraid, because Jesus is with us. And so it's important to be happy to say that Jesus is with us, and we can continue to be with the people. Because one of the problem is when you are afraid of the people, you do a distance, you know, and it's like racism. So we need to be with the other people, to love them. So we cannot be afraid of the other people. We have to be certain that we are loved by the God, and we have to spread this love to the other people.
Well, Father, thank you so much for that, and thank you for joining us today. We appreciate your time. Father Stefano Cascio, parish priest at the Church of St. Bonaventure in Rome. Thanks again, Father.
Thanks you. Bye-bye, Tracy.
Coming up, Catholic officials react to the death of a man while in police custody. Plus, an update on the path to sainthood for the founder of the Knights of Columbus. Four Minneapolis officers involved in the arrest of a black man who died in police custody have been fired hours after a bystander's video showed an officer kneeling on the handcuffed man's neck even after George Floyd pleaded, saying that he couldn't breathe and stop moving. Correspondent Mark Irons has the latest. Mark?
Tracy, the family of George Floyd is demanding those officers be charged with murder. The Monday incident has sparked large protest in Minneapolis and now a response from the Minnesota Catholic Conference.
What do you want? I can breathe. This video showing a white police officer pressing his knee into the neck of a black man, George Floyd, prone on the street moments before he was pronounced dead at the hospital. I can't breathe, officer. The full video shows George Floyd go silent after the minutes pass by in the same position. Police say Floyd matched the description of a suspect in a forgery case at a grocery store and that he resisted arrest. The chief of police in Minneapolis has removed the officers involved from the line of duty.
So again, my condolences, deepest condolences.
Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey supports the move. In an emotional reaction to Floyd's death, he said being black in America should not be a death sentence.
When you hear someone calling for help, you are supposed to help. This officer failed in the most basic human sense.
We need justice for my brother.
George Floyd's family members say they want to see more than the firing of the officers involved.
What I did see was murder, and that's what I want them to be arrested and charged and convicted for.
Thousands in Minneapolis have turned out to protest after public outrage over the incident. And this week, the Minnesota Catholic Conference released a statement in response to George Floyd's death saying, "This is a tragedy. It is good that state and federal investigators are looking into the incident to determine what happened."
The police chief in Minneapolis says his department will conduct a full internal investigation. It's up to prosecutors to decide whether to file criminal charges against those officers involved. And Tracy, now the FBI is involved in this case.
Our correspondent Mark Irons reporting for us tonight. Thank you, Mark, for that report. A record number of Catholics left the church in the German archdiocese of Munich and Freising last year. Data from the Munich Statistical Office shows that more than 10,000 Catholics formally withdrew from the church in 2019. Statisticians say this is the first time that annual departures surpassed the 10,000 mark since record-keeping began. And Christoph Emmer, editor-in-chief of Catholic News Agency, joins me now by Skype from Munich with more on this story. Christoph, welcome back to the show.
Glad to be here, Tracy. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you, Christoph. So, Christoph, what does that process of formally withdrawing from the church entail, and what does it mean for the individuals themselves?
They have to file paperwork with the local council, which is really like a tax form, because that's really what it is. However, the consequences are far more drastic when you look at it from a Catholic point of view. They are no longer allowed to really go to Mass. They're certainly not afforded a Christian burial, as a letter then promptly sent to them by their local diocese informs them.
Do we know why so many Catholics from this particular archdiocese are leaving the church?
Well, we do. There have been a number of studies, and it does not appear to be only the Archdiocese of Munich and Freising in particular, or the metropolitan area of Munich, which has had such high numbers recorded over the last year. There is a broader trend at play here, and there have been a number of studies that say people are unhappy with paying 8 to 9% of their income tax for an institution they also feel increasingly alienated about, and the abuse scandal certainly has played a role.
What's the impact on the church because of this?
It will be massive. The German church has had increasing funding over the last couple of decades, despite a rising number of people leaving it. So much so that in the financial year 2018-19, the church in Germany had church tax income of over 7.2 billion American dollars in that year. With numbers of people leaving, with the coronavirus crisis and a number of other changes taking place, we will see certain difficulties coming to the church that might include the closure of Catholic schools, but also the reduction of parishes and parish priests, but above all the superstructure, which is massive. In German dioceses, you can have thousands of employees working for one diocese alone. That is a path that cannot continue, in particular because a study has shown that by 2060, the number of Catholics in Germany will have halved.
Well, Cardinal Reinhard Marx is the Archbishop of Munich and Freising. Have we heard from him on this?
So far, there has not been a statement with regards to these numbers. Mind you, that is not particularly surprising. The German Bishops' Conference has, in its wisdom, decided that usually they only communicate the latest statistical figures of people leaving the church once a year together as a whole.
Well, Christoph, thank you so much for joining us and for your insight on this. And Christoph Emmer, editor-in-chief of Catholic News Agency Deutsch. Thank you again for your analysis.
Thank you, Tracy.
Up next, Pope Francis reminds the faithful of the power of prayer. And we have reaction after the Vatican approves a miracle attributed to the founder of the Knights of Columbus. Pope Francis reminds the faithful of the power of prayer.
Un seme di vita, il seme del dialogo con Dio.
At his weekly talk at the Vatican, the Holy Father says prayer is the key to a relationship with God. It is a way for us to ask Him for help. He answers by taking care of our hearts and drawing us closer to Him and further away from the evil in the world. Pope Francis has approved a miracle attributed to the intercession of Venerable Father Michael J. McGiveny, paving the way for the beatification of the founder of the Knights of Columbus. The Vatican made that announcement today. The Pope's action means Father McGiveny can be declared blessed, the step just prior to sainthood. An additional miracle attributed to Father McGivney's intercession will be required for his possible canonization as a saint. Joining me now on Skype to talk more about this very exciting news is Archbishop Leonard P. Blair of the Archdiocese of Hartford. Your Excellency, welcome to the show. Thanks so much for coming on.
You're very welcome. It's great to be with you.
So Father McGivny's sainthood cause officially opened more than 20 years ago in the Archdiocese of Hartford. What is your reaction to today's announcement?
Well, this wonderful confirmation from heaven of the heroic virtue and sanctity of one of our priests, a priest of the Archdiocese of Hartford, comes as wonderful news and a great encouragement to all of us. So I was very pleased, and I know all of our clergy and people will be, together with all the Knights of Columbus around the world, that their founder, Father Michael J. McGiveny, will be soon beatified.
What can you tell us about the miracle attributed to Father McGivny's intercession?
Well, I understand it was the healing in utero of an unborn child at the intercession of Father McGiveny, which took place in the United States. I don't know over time how much that comes to the fore about the exact people involved, although I think very often at beatifications, the people who were involved in the miracle are present for the ceremony, and I suspect that may be the case here as well.
I know Father McGivny's legacy is so far-reaching. As a priest who served his flock, to his founding of the Knights of Columbus, which has become, as we know, one of the largest Catholic organizations in the world. Can you talk a little bit more about the influence that he has had on the faithful?
Well, I think his influence has been principally through the Knights and their families, but certainly here in the Archdiocese of Hartford, where he was a priest of the Archdiocese. The memory of his service as a priest is an example and an inspiration to us today. And not only that, but his heavenly intercession, because I know that prayers to Father McGiveny are a part of the life of many people, including many clergy. I have said the prayer for his beatification every day. And so in that sense, in the communion of saints, you know, we have one of our own that has been confirmed in this way by a heavenly sign. And I think it's something welcomed to increase the faith of people everywhere. You know, he was known for, his biographers say that he was particularly known for his deep Catholic faith and for his tremendous empathy, for his tremendous kindness. And I think in our day today, we certainly need the example of that empathy, you know, in the middle of the coronavirus and so many other things that confront us. That's a wonderful example of sanctity and of virtue.
Yeah, Father McGivny's beatification mass will take place in Connecticut. The date is soon to be set, but certainly a joyous news for us during what has been a very challenging time. Yes.
And, you know, I might add, too, that Father McGiveny actually became ill during the pandemic of 1889-90. It was known as the Asian or Russian flu back then. And 1 million people around the world died at the time. And he became ill afterward with pneumonia and died at the tender age of 38. But his life ended in the context of a pandemic. And so I think that also says something to us today. And perhaps in invoking his intercession for people who are sick today, it might be good to recall that about his own life.
Yes, certainly. Thank you so much, Your Excellency, for coming on and sharing your insights with us. We really appreciate your time. Archbishop Leonard P. Blair of the Archdiocese of Hartford, thank you again.
You're most welcome.
A reminder, EWTN broadcasts Mass throughout the day. Mass airs at 8 a.m., noon, and 7 p.m. Eastern. We are also airing other special programming, and you can find our schedule at EWTN.com. There you will also find Eucharistic adoration throughout the day. We thank you for watching tonight. For the entire EWTN News Nightly team, I'm Tracy Sable. We're back tomorrow with more news from a Catholic perspective. Good night, and God bless.